General Hospital spoilers reveal that one of the most fascinating developments currently unfolding in General Hospital is the growing obsession surrounding the character of Jack Brennan, a character who, despite originally entering the canvas as a short-term or recurring figure, has now become a centerpiece in the increasingly complex and psychologically dense narrative structure of the show. This intensifying obsession, both from within the fandom and the show's own writing team, reflects not just a character shift, but also a behind-the-scenes transformation that speaks volumes about Chris McKenna's newly adjusted contractual status. The move from part-time to full contract for McKenna is not just a change on paper. It's a profound structural adjustment that is allowing the writers to pivot the show around a new axis, one that is becoming ever more saturated with psychological pressure, layered conflict, and irreversible consequences. This contract adjustment is not merely an administrative decision, it is, in many ways, a storytelling declaration that Brennan is here to stay, and he will not leave quietly. What began as a seemingly contained role, an operative representing the WSB with shadowy motives and a questionable moral compass, has now evolved into a far more unstable and enigmatic presence in Port Charles. The writers have slowly, yet deliberately, increased Brennan's involvement in key storylines, and this escalating focus is mirroring the very real, behind-the-scenes shift in McKenna's contract status. The obsession with Brennan is no longer a subtext, it is the text. He has become the new prism through which chaos refracts. And with McKenna now officially under contract, the show has the narrative real estate to explore his darkness without restraint. The adjustments in the storytelling are inseparable from the adjustments in the casting. It is, at its core, a storytelling endorsement, a message that Brennan is not only staying, but that his role will deepen, darken, and destabilize the characters around him. This newfound narrative fixation has also catalyzed a series of deliberate shocks to the system. These shocks are not incidental, they are strategic recalibrations meant to accommodate and amplify Brennan's expanding presence. Each shock functions as a narrative detonation, further unearthing Brennan's emotional instability, his obsession with power, and his conflicted desire for control. Whether it is his manipulative recruitment of Jocelyn into the WSB or his calculated emotional entanglement with Carly Spencer, Brennan is no longer the side character pushing plot points from the margins, he is the destabilizing agent forcing every other character to react. And as each shockwave rolls through Port Charles, it becomes increasingly evident that the obsession with Brennan is not just an effect, it is a cause. The plot is no longer simply unfolding around him. It is warping to accommodate him. And this, in turn, reveals a deeper truth about the evolution of General Hospital. The show is undergoing a subtle but significant adjustment in its own structural DNA. The contract modification for McKenna was not just an internal HR move, it was a necessary adjustment to match the new energy Brennan has brought to the series. With so many legacy characters locked in cyclical conflicts or slowly fading from narrative relevance, Brennan represents something radical, a character whose actions have not yet been fully mapped, whose loyalties are in flux, and whose consequences are still to be determined. His presence allows the writers to shake loose from predictable arcs and instead plunge into deeper, messier, more emotionally brutal territory. And that territory is exactly where GH seems most interested in heading. Yet, with every new adjustment comes chaos. And with every new chaos comes complication. The elevation of Brennan to contract status brings with it not just screen time, but responsibility for emotional wreckage, narrative divergence, and interpersonal destruction. One of the primary complications already emerging from this adjustment is the increasing difficulty of understanding Brennan's true motivations. As he manipulates Jocelyn into dangerous assignments while simultaneously seducing her mother under the guise of care and protection, the viewer is left to question whether Brennan is a villain in disguise or a man drowning in the complexity of his own emotional contradictions. This moral ambiguity is by design. And it is intensifying. It mirrors the very obsession the show itself seems to have with placing him at the epicenter of ethical chaos. The more the plot recalibrates to fit Brennan's rising importance, the more evident it becomes that the show is actively reorienting itself around him. And that reorientation is not without consequences. Characters once seen as moral centers, Carly, Jason, even Jocelyn, are now behaving erratically. Pushed into desperation by the choices Brennan has made or the truths he has withheld. And the ripple effects extend far beyond immediate relationships. His involvement in the WSB's investigation into Hank Dalton isn't just a procedural subplot, it's a conduit through which deeper questions of identity, surveillance, and governmental corruption are being explored. Brennan is no longer a character, he is a narrative tool, a psychological labyrinth that the show has chosen to delve into, and in doing so, it has adjusted every other moving part around him. What we are witnessing now is the collision of obsession and consequence. Brennan is being written as a man consumed by control. But the show itself is also under the sway of its own obsession with him. This is not inherently a flaw, in fact, it is what gives the current arc its volatile brilliance. But the danger lies in escalation. As Brennan's storyline deepens, so too does the show's reliance on him. The contract change means he will be around for the long haul, but longevity demands evolution. Brennan can no longer simply be the agent of other people's destruction. He must also face destruction himself. Whether it's Carly finally realizing the depths of his manipulation or Jason discovering the full extent of his lies and retaliating with merciless precision, the narrative must eventually force Brennan to implode. The obsession with his power must give way to the consequences of his abuse of it. The show's obsession with Brennan, mirrored in McKenna's contract upgrade, is not without precedent. GH has a long history of letting morally gray characters anchor the narrative, Sonny, Jason, Valentine, and others. But what makes Brennan's rise unique is how quickly he has become indispensable. This speed has created a kind of narrative whiplash, where other characters must adjust their arcs to accommodate the gravitational pull Brennan now exerts. Carly has gone from mourning to intrigue. Jocelyn has gone from college student to spy in training. Jason has gone from protector to potential executioner. And none of it feels accidental. All of it feels like a carefully calculated adjustment, one that began when McKenna was handed a full contract and given the mandate to dig deeper, go darker, and destabilize more. The obsession is not just narrative, it's structural, psychological, even aesthetic. Brennan's scenes are filmed with colder lighting, tighter frames, and an unsettling stillness that contrasts sharply with the often chaotic energy of Port Charles. The show is signaling to viewers that this character exists in a different emotional register, and that his presence will shift the tone of the entire canvas. The longer he stays, the more the show transforms around him. It is a bold move. One that carries risk, but it is also evidence of a show willing to bet big on a character whose emotional ambiguity promises to deliver narrative dividends for months, even years to come. In the end, what we are left with is an evolving ecosystem, one where obsession drives adjustment, and adjustment breeds conflict. McKenna's contract modification is more than a behind-the-scenes footnote, it is the cornerstone of a new General Hospital era, one where Brennan is not merely a character but a disruption. And the more the show leans into that disruption, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just a change in personnel, it's a change in philosophy. Brennan doesn't just represent chaos, he is chaos. And the longer Port Charles allows him to thrive, the more inevitable it becomes that someone, will shatter. Brennan's storyline on General Hospital is rapidly spiraling into deeper madness, driven by a relentless series of adjustments to truths that refuse to stay buried. What began as a slow unraveling of WSB agendas and covert motivations has now become a volatile storm, fueled by layers of psychological obsession and a dangerous willingness to manipulate anyone necessary to stay ahead. The pivotal shift, Jocelyn's shocking induction into the WSB, was not simply a narrative twist. It was a bold restructuring of truth itself, a recalibration of the show's moral architecture, and one that continues to reveal how far Brennan is willing to go to satisfy his personal and professional compulsions. The adjustments now being made are not just within the agency or among the characters caught in Brennan's orbit, they are within Brennan himself, as his behavior grows increasingly erratic. His obsessions darker, and his endgame more terrifyingly unclear. The introduction of Jocelyn into this high-stakes spy world was not an accident, nor was it a moment of heroism cloaked in mentorship. It was a calculated maneuver that exposes Brennan's increasing detachment from ethical boundaries. This wasn't about training the next generation. It was about control over the daughter of the one woman Brennan can't seem to disentangle himself from emotionally. As truths shift and evolve, so too does the core of Brennan's character, which now appears to be fractured by desire, authority, and a twisted sense of destiny. The truth about Jocelyn's involvement in the WSB isn't just a threat to her safety, it's a weapon Brennan is willing to wield, even if it means risking everything. This willingness marks one of the most alarming adjustments yet in the show's depiction of Brennan. His fixation on Carly has mutated from a complicated romantic entanglement into something far more disturbing. It's not just emotional anymore, it's strategic. Each step he takes toward Jocelyn is a step deeper into Carly's psyche. Brennan is orchestrating an emotional chess game where every move involving the daughter destabilizes the mother. And what once seemed like a man drawn to Carly for her strength and resilience now feels like a man obsessed with breaking her open, slowly and methodically, until she is forced to either surrender or destroy him. These evolving truths, these intentional adjustments, are the fuel behind Brennan's growing instability. Each secret he buries only deepens his paranoia. Each manipulation he engineers widens the chasm between him and redemption. The decision to involve Jocelyn in active WSB operations wasn't about necessity. It was about obsession. And now, as the consequences of that decision begin to manifest, the entire town is shifting in reaction. Carly is being pulled into a vortex of fear and rage. Jason, sensing the danger, is on the verge of retribution. And Brennan, far from being the master of his fate, is becoming consumed by the very web he's woven. What we are seeing isn't just a character crossing a moral line, it's a systemic unraveling. Brennan's storyline is now laced with a feverish desperation, a wild volatility that threatens to detonate the stability of everyone involved. The writers are adjusting the narrative not just to accommodate this chaos, but to embrace it. They are feeding the madness, allowing Brennan to slip further into darkness as his grip on control becomes ever more fragile. Every revelation that surfaces about Jocelyn's involvement, every confrontation with Carly, every unspoken word of suspicion from Jason, tightens the coil of tension, until the only possible outcome is an explosion. And make no mistake, Brennan knows it. He is aware. Perhaps even addicted to the very chaos he's causing. The obsession with Carly is no longer a subplot, it is the driving force behind his decisions, his manipulations, and his descent. The shockwaves are already forming. The truth about how Jocelyn was recruited. The secrets Brennan kept from Carly. The lies fed to the WSB to justify his actions. Each layer is a landmine waiting to be stepped on. And when the truth does come out, when Carly realizes just how deeply Brennan has woven his obsession into the lives of those she loves, the fallout will be catastrophic. The storyline is no longer about espionage. It's about invasion, of trust, of emotional boundaries, of family. Brennan is no longer simply a spy. He's become an emotional saboteur, weaponizing love and loyalty as tools of psychological warfare. The adjustments in the narrative aren't just reshaping the plot, they are revealing the terrifying truth that Brennan is willing to push Carly into destruction just to feel close to her. And as that truth becomes undeniable, so too does the danger he represents, not just to Carly, but to Port Charles as a whole. In the end, Brennan's arc is becoming less about his past and more about his unraveling. The obsession is no longer hidden. It is active. It is alive. And it is reaching its most dangerous peak. With every truth adjusted, with every lie reinforced, Brennan walks one step closer to collapse. And the terrifying question that now haunts every scene he appears in is no longer, what is Brennan hiding, but what will Brennan destroy next? Because as his obsession grows darker and his control more unhinged, it becomes clear that Brennan's greatest mission was never to protect national security, but to claim Carly Spencer. Piece by shattered piece, until there is nothing left of the woman he says he loves. Brennan's storyline has reached a breaking point so volatile, so consumed by darkness and obsession, that the inevitable outcome now seems unavoidable, death. What began as an ambitious character arc, meant to insert a mysterious and authoritative WSB presence into the canvas of General Hospital, has evolved into a psychological descent so unstable. It threatens to fracture the very fabric of Port Charles. And in the midst of this descent stands Chris McKenna, whose performance has brought Jack Brennan to life with chilling precision. But as whispers grow louder about McKenna's impending exit from the show, viewers are beginning to accept that Brennan's end is not only imminent, but already written. The death of Brennan is no longer a possibility, it is a certainty. And the storm now brewing is a direct result of a dangerous obsession that spiraled beyond his control. Everything changed the moment Brennan crossed a line that no one else dared approach, recruiting Jocelyn Jacks into the WSB. This decision was not strategic, not protective. Not born from a higher cause, it was personal. It was a symptom of a deeper compulsion, one rooted in his fixation with Carly Spencer, a woman whose resilience, independence, and vulnerability awakened something unmanageable in him. Brennan's obsession with Carly went beyond romance, beyond desire. It became an emotional stronghold he refused to release. And when Carly would not willingly let him into her world, he found another way in, through her daughter. The recruitment of Jocelyn marked a turning point in Brennan's trajectory. What might have been seen as a misguided but operational decision quickly unraveled into a full-blown violation of trust. Carly had spent her entire life fighting to protect her children from the shadows that haunted her past, and now, one of those shadows had breached her defenses in the most calculated way. Brennan knew the consequences. He understood the risk. But the obsession had already blinded him, dulling his sense of consequence and silencing his conscience. Jocelyn was never just a young agent in training, she was the living embodiment of Carly's heart. And by manipulating her, Brennan believed he could finally control the woman he could never truly have. The story has now accelerated to a place where redemption is no longer possible. Jason Morgan, whose loyalty to Carly and Jocelyn has never wavered, immediately recognized the gravity of Brennan's betrayal. For Jason, lines are clear. Family is sacred. Protection is non-negotiable. And the moment he discovered Brennan's involvement with Jocelyn, the course was set. Sonny Corinthos, too, understood the threat. He may wear the mask of a businessman, but his soul is forged from survival and protection. Brennan's actions did not merely threaten the family's safety, they insulted its code. Together, Jason and Sonny now move with deliberate precision, methodically eliminating any threat that dares come close to the people they've sworn to protect. And Brennan, once a man cloaked in agency protection, now finds himself completely exposed. There is no turning back. Every step Brennan takes is haunted by the weight of his choices. His paranoia is no longer paranoia, it is prophecy. He hears footsteps in the night that are real. He sees shadows that follow him because they have a mission. Jason and Sonny are not seeking justice, they are executing a sentence. They do not confront with words. They destroy with silence. Brennan, for all his intelligence and tactical training, is cornered by his own unraveling. The obsession that fueled his ambition has become his cage. The truth has been adjusted so many times to suit his narrative that even he no longer knows where the lies end and the reality begins. But the men coming for him? They know exactly what he did. And they are prepared to end it. Chris McKenna's performance as Brennan has captured something rare, an emotional duality that is both commanding and disturbingly intimate. He gave Brennan not only an edge, but a weakness, a craving for human connection that morphed into dangerous control. But that nuance now sharpens the impact of what's to come. Brennan's death will not be accidental. It will be orchestrated. It will be the resolution of a war he started when he chose to cross into the lives of Carly and Jocelyn without permission. And this death will not cleanse the canvas, it will stain it. It will remind every character watching from the periphery that obsession is not love, and protection does not tolerate manipulation. The decision to end Brennan's life is also an internal reckoning for General Hospital itself. The show is acknowledging that this character, as rich and fascinating as he has been, has outgrown the confines of sustainable morality. Brennan cannot be softened. He cannot be reformed. His arc has demanded escalation, and now that escalation requires finality. The death of Brennan is the natural conclusion to a story that pushed too far, that invaded too deeply, and that crossed the most sacred boundary, endangering the daughter of Port Charles's most fiercely protective mother. Carly is not a woman who forgives easily. And Jason is not a man who grants second chances. Brennan's obsession wrote its own ending. The bullet, the blade, or the fall will only be the final punctuation. And as Chris McKenna prepares to step away from the role, it becomes evident that Brennan's exit is more than a plot twist. It is a necessary correction. A wound that must be cauterized. A cautionary tale about what happens when control becomes compulsion. And when love becomes a weapon. His death, if it is executed as the story demands, will resonate far beyond his final breath. Carly will never forget what he did. Jocelyn will carry the scars of betrayal. Jason and Sonny will never speak of it again, because in their world, some things are too sacred, and too dangerous, to relive. Brennan's name will vanish from conversation, but his impact will linger like a shadow. This is the price of obsession. This is the cost of stepping into a world governed not by justice, but by blood loyalty. Brennan chose his war. And now, Port Charles will choose his ending.